Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Marr, that noise here is my ventilator. And welcome to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. Before we begin today's podcast, a little bit of breaking news. A little bit of development news in Star Wars. The Kathleen Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilm, has named Michelle Rejwan as senior vice president of live action development and production for Lucasfilm. Rejwan was a producer on The Force Awakens and several films for Bad Robot with J.J. Abrams. She has now been named the senior vice president, as I said, of live action development and production, meaning she will be overseeing the upcoming films and live action television. So this is an exciting bit of news. I know that there's been a lot of debate recently about having more women included in the creative process of Star Wars. And I'm very pleased with this decision, so I thought I'd announce that. And I like the idea that Kathleen Kennedy has named someone to oversee this particular department. So I hope the best to Michelle Rejwan. So let's jump into today's topic. In 1997, the American Film Institute released their list of the top 100 greatest American movies. As will probably come as no particular surprise, Star Wars did indeed make that list. Now, what is this list? How do they determine 100 greatest American movies? Well, it's voted on by the members of the American Film Institute, and it takes into account such things as critical recognition, popularity, cultural impact, and influence on film. So Star Wars, in the very original list, placed number 15. In 2007, for the 10th anniversary of this list, the AFI released a new list which included some changes in position on the various films. Certain films were left out while others were added. And 4 films that came out between 1997 and 2007 were added to the list. Star Wars went up 2 places to become the 13th greatest American film, according to this list. Now, I was under the impression that in 2017 that they were going to do another list as a 20th anniversary to the original list. This would take into account 10 more years, would yet again probably cause the positions to change. Now, if I may pause for a moment, I do not know exactly how they determined this, but I do believe it was voted on by members of the AFI and others within the film community. And I think the order of the list was determined by which films received the most votes. That's my guess. Going from the number 1 film being the film with most votes to the number 100. The film with least votes, but still a lot of votes. So I believe that is how they determined this list. So I was thinking, for the 20th anniversary of the list, that they would be able to take into account those 10 years, take into account changing tastes, look at some older films that were never included on any of the lists, and those films might actually get inclusion, while other films may be dropped entirely. They did not, however, and I'm not exactly sure why. I believe the 10th anniversary list may have been just a one-time thing. However, I am not suggesting that any list should determine what makes a good film and what doesn't, or that any list can truly define what are the greatest American films, or the greatest films in the world for that matter. That is a nearly impossible task, and it all depends on the various viewers' individual opinions. However, the AFI list is a good starting place, and I would say to anybody listening, if you want to see some great films that you might not otherwise have seen, I would say start with the AFI list. It might help you, point you in the right direction to the films that you should start watching. Now, what does this have to do with Star Wars? I was wondering, would Star Wars have changed its position on the list if there had been another list released in 2017? Now, as I said, Star Wars was number 15 on the original list and then number 13 on the 2007 list. Would its position have changed more? I am inclined to think yes. Now, when I say Star Wars, I am referring to Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, which is what it's officially called on the AFI list, though, as I like to mention, its original release title was Star Wars. And also, the AFI list has not made it clear which version of the film we're talking about. I would assume the DVD version. Not the Blu-ray version, but the DVD version, which has a lot of changes from the original. That being said, that's not really the point of our discussion today. I believe that it is entirely possible that Star Wars may have cracked the top 10 greatest American films. Now, let us briefly list off the top 10 American films. Now remember, Star Wars is number 13. The top 10 goes as follows. Number 1, Citizen Kane. Number 2, The Godfather. Number 3, Casablanca. Number 4, Raging Bull. Number 5, Singing in the Rain. Number 6, Gone with the Wind. Number 7, Lawrence of Arabia. Number 8, Schindler's List. Number 9, Vertigo. And number 10, The Wizard of Oz. Now, that's quite a list, and I have seen all of them. If Star Wars were to crack the top 10, what film could it possibly displace on this list of marvelous movies? Well, Citizen Kane, no. No, I do not believe that Star Wars can make it to the number 1 spot. Nor do I believe that Star Wars could displace The Godfather or Casablanca. Raging Bull, which I have to admit I've only seen once, I still don't see Star Wars displacing. Singing in the Rain, no way. And Gone with the Wind. Now, Gone with the Wind, which, may I add, is a marvelous film, is the only film on this list I could see Star Wars displacing. I could not see Star Wars displacing Lawrence of Arabia, Schindler's List, Vertigo, or The Wizard of Oz. I just can't see that. Now, why, you may ask, would I even suggest that Star Wars could displace Gone with the Wind? Now, mind you, this has nothing to do, in my mind, with the quality of the movie. or me trying to say that, oh, Star Wars is better than Gone with the Wind. Here's my reason. Gone with the Wind is a problematic film. It is a great film. It's made in a different era, so it has different sensibilities than we have today, so we shouldn't judge it too harshly on that sense. However, I do believe that even though the movie occupies an extremely important place in the history of American film, as I said, it's not very politically correct. It has elements that are racist and sexist. These things cannot be denied. Now, I don't believe that this makes it a bad film. It's a runner-up to one of my favorite films. It's marvelous. However, I think maybe with changing tastes, it is indeed possible that Star Wars would end up in the top 10. And that, to me, is the only film I could see it displacing. Now, I believe that the AFI members, if they were to vote again, Gone with the Wind might end up going down because of its political incorrectness. And maybe the members of the AFI would have a problem with it. Now, this brings us to a very controversial subject. And that is the idea of how should we look at films that have problematic ethics? Does this reflect on their quality? I do not believe it reflects poorly on their quality. Now, let's talk about why Star Wars would probably go up into the top 10. I think, even though the last list was in 2007 when Star Wars was extremely popular, I believe that Star Wars' popularity has only increased in the last 12 years. It continues to increase exponentially, and not just popularity. But I think as the years go on, its cultural influence, its significance to film history only increases. Partially as a result of more sequels, but also just as its cultural impact grows, as new generations are introduced to it and the numbers just grow larger. In fact, I believe that Comic-Con and many other of the major conventions would probably not be as big of a deal as they are if it were not for the continuing increase in popularity of Star Wars. 2007, you were lucky if any news stations covered Comic-Con in San Diego. Nowadays, it's a big deal, and that's where all the major movie announcements come from. So, I believe that Star Wars may have played a part in that. So, to sum it all up, I think it's possible that Star Wars could end up in the top 10 American films, if they had done the list again. As I said, the only film I think it could challenge is Gone with the Wind, but that is no slight on Gone with the Wind. Nor is it to suggest that Star Wars is a better film than Gone with the Wind. It just, I believe, its strength as a piece of film history has only increased as the years go on. Let me know what you think. Those are my thoughts on Star Wars and the AFI. Thank you so much for tuning in to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.